Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my very first new album spotlight of 2024. I'm excited to be with you. This is a show I do every Tuesday where I highlight a new album in progressive rock that I think you guys, the watchers of this channel, will enjoy. This one's a big one for me, the first big release of the year from my perspective at least. This is Neal Morse's The Restoration Joseph Part 2, which is a continuation album from last year's Joseph Part 1, The Dreamer, which came out, I believe, in August last year, so not too long after the release of that, we already have the sequel album, which to me, these two albums feel like they fit hand in hand. Like, you can't really listen to this album in isolation. You need to have heard Part 1 first to be able to really fully embrace the storyline and understand the through line from one to the next. There's a lot of callbacks in this album that call back to parts from Joseph Part 1, which is a lot of fun if you're familiar with the motifs and themes that came about from that first album. So Neal Morse is an artist that probably needs no introduction on this channel. He's my favorite musician and artist. I fell in love with modern prog through him and his contributions with Spock's-Beard. He left Spock's-Beard after 6 albums with them and went off to do a very, very cool solo career. With albums such as Testimony, One, Sola Scriptura. Switched it up a little bit by creating the Neal Morse Band, which featured more collaboration from members such as Eric Gillette and Bill Hubauer, and of course Mike Portnoy and Randy George on the rhythm section, as had been on his solo records. And he's also been involved with Transatlantic, doing really big, epic progressive rock as well. But he also does a lot of these kind of little side solo projects just to keep himself entertained, I suppose. He did a musical, Jesus Christ the Exorcist. He's done some folkier solo albums. He's done some more singer-songwriter stuff. He does his DiVirgilio, Morse, and Jennings work, which focuses more on a Crosby, Stills, and Nash folk kind of vibe. So he has a lot of outlets for different styles of music that he's involved in. And this project, this Joseph Part 2, is more in that rock opera type lane. A bit of a flavor like the musical aspect of Jesus Christ the Exorcist, but I feel like it's a little bit more in a rockier vein, more prog elements. It's like that musical theater aspect is just one of many different flavors that he uses on the album. But probably what makes it feel like that kind of musical vibe is because he has a whole host of different singers who play the different characters throughout the record. Some of the vocalists that he has throughout the record, Nick DiVirgilio, Ted Leonard, Matt Smith, Ross Jennings, Jake Livgren. And Talon David also comes into the fray towards the end. So you've got some familiar vocalists who've worked with Neal in the past and who are familiar to fans of modern progressive rock. And they all play their parts really extremely well, and it adds to the variety and the fun of the record. And so this album is pretty much, to me, just a showcase of everything that Neal's all about, all the different styles that he plays within, plenty of catchy choruses that he writes, this cast of colorful characters, and just a lot of fun throughout the record. And that's what I've always loved about Neal's music, is that he has a lot of fun. You can tell that he just has a blast writing this material, and it comes across that way. But he's also able to get into some very emotional moments to portray some of the more gut-wrenching moments of the story and bring about those feelings that Joseph himself is feeling in the storyline of, anger towards his brothers, but also feeling this like forgiveness and this beauty of this reunion with people that he loves. So it's a really special story that just goes through so many different styles and moods throughout the whole track listing. Just to highlight some of the cool things you can expect throughout the record. Starts with a little bit of an intro in Cosmic Mess, but leads to a more bouncier, Beatles-esque kind of rocker, a little bit of a psychedelia kind of section in the middle that breaks it up. My Dream has kind of a big arena rock style a cappella chorus and some really cool vocals from all of the members of DMJ, DiVirgilio, Morse, and Jennings. You get some cool stuff in All Hail, which has almost a dreamy, jazzy, kind of Pink Floyd type section with Neal singing in falsetto. Really beautiful, moving into The Argument, which has those Gentle Giant style counterpoint rounds that Neal Morse is known for, that he's done a lot with Spock's-Beard and also in his solo stuff. Make Like a Breeze is a great, energetic, proggy rocker that really brings more of that Gentle Giant-y energy and maybe some Kansas. Really exciting stuff as we move into I Hate My Brothers, which is just an infectious, fun, catchy rock song that hits hard, some tasty sax soloing, and bringing back some of those jazzy bits from All Hail. It's really fun. And then we get into some of this callback section. In Guilty as Charged, we get Ted Leonard singing some melodies that are familiar from part one. In Reckoning, we get a reprise of that Gold Dust City motif. We get, in Brothers Repent, Joseph revealed all kinds of callbacks to the part one overture, and also to Out of Sight, Out of Mind, and Wait on You, and all of these big sections. They're all brought back in this really big emotional climax of the album. You also get some fun little different flavors, like in Bring Ben, you get almost an R&B jazz kind of flavor to the music. In The Brothers Repent, you get a bit of that Latin type, Senior Velasco type style that Neal goes into. And towards the end, with Everlasting, you get a bit of this world music, kind of percussive heavy, with horns and excitement, African rhythms. It's a really fun explosion of styles and sounds, not unlike Reunion from one, and the feel of it, like this big party as everyone's happy, and that we lead to this big conclusion of the album. And in the final track, Dawning of a New Day, God Uses Everything for Good, we get our classic Neal Morse ballad leading into this epic moment. Feels like a comforting hug. This is just what you'd expect from a grand conclusion to a Neal Morse-led album. So I really love Neal Morse and all of his works and what he does, because to me, what he's able to do, sure, a lot of people complain that he follows a similar formula throughout all his records, and I won't deny that, but he takes this really well thought out formula that works extremely well in portraying these stories and tweaks it just slightly to give you a little bit new flavor here and there to enjoy, like those Latin sections or some of those Gentle Giant vocal counterpoint bits, some of those different styles that he throws into the mix to keep things varied and interesting and fun. But he keeps the story at the central core of it and tells it very brilliantly and brings his emotional style and weight to the project. So I'm just really impressed with this album. It's better than I expected it to be. Coming in to this whole project, to Joseph Part 1 especially, I was worried that it was going to lean more into that musical theater direction of Jesus Christ the Exorcist, which I did not prefer. I want him to do more of the proggy stuff like he does with Neal Morse Band. This to me is a good compromise where, yeah, sure, there's the musical theater type stuff. There's a lot of call and response vocals, and they're really leaning into telling this story and really portraying these characters in a very storyline type way. But he infuses it with enough of his Neal Morse Band-esque, proggy sections that bring a lot of fun and flavor to the party and make it feel more like a rock album than a musical, perhaps. And so that's what I really respect and appreciate with these albums that really blew me away. Part 2 is even better than Part 1 to me and elevates how I feel about Part 1 because they work so well in tandem together. And, I obviously am biased because Neal Morse is just my favorite artist and everything he touches turns to gold for me. And this is no exception. It's another solid concept album from him, who is becoming the master of the modern concept record. And for good reason, because he's able to bring a lot of prog energy and style, make it fun to listen through. Every track has something fun and quirky to grab your ear and keep you interested and entertained, but it never loses sight of the story and hits you with that emotional punch at the end that he's well known for, and it just makes for a fantastic record. I would listen to these two parts back to back. They work in tandem together. All the callbacks that happen in the second half of this record don't really work unless you know what he's drawing from in part one, is kind of my feeling about it. But that doesn't change the fact that this is just a fantastic record also on its own and has so many great things to call back to and to enjoy. So I hope you guys will check it out. If you have been hesitant to check out Neal Morse, I know the controversy a little bit for certain people is that he leans heavy into these religious themes, which definitely isn't for everybody, and I understand that. But I feel like in these records, he kind of gives it more of a storyteller vibe. These are just interesting stories to hear about, however you view them personally. And sure, he does kind of turn it around at the end to the audience and kind of tries to make a message out of this story. But, this is just how Neal feels and his beliefs. And for me, when I listen to music, I like to hear the perspective of the artist. Even if I don't agree with everything they believe in, I just find it fascinating to see where they're coming from and how they feel about the world. There's some interesting perspectives that I think help us as people to be able to get a wider feel and perspective for the world and what everyone's thinking. So that's how I feel about Neal, and I really respect him as an artist and glad that he's continuing to do things that he feels inspired by. And I will be around whenever he wants to produce an album. I will be listening because I respect him as an artist. And so thank you guys for joining me. Let me know how you felt about this album if you've heard it. And please check it out if you haven't yet. I think it's definitely worthy of listening to, even if you've been off the Neal Morse train for some time. I think it's a worthy one to come back to and to kind of check out where he's at now in his style. So thank you guys for all of your support with the channel. It's been great, and I hope there's a lot of great new music spotlights to do in the future. Thank you guys for joining me. Bye, everybody.